Are you ready for rapid fire?
I'm always ready for the
best part of
fire.
the show, baby. Let's roll.
All right. Here we go. We'll start with Vince and then over to Jesse. Fill in the blank. It's blank that Notre Dame now has won 27 consecutive games against ACC teams after taking out Clemson last week.
It's embarrassing for the ACC. That's where I'll go. Because they don't have anybody that can beat Notre Dame in the regular season. Like, you've thrown every single team you have against Notre Dame, and none of them have won. That's embarrassing.
Yeah, it's complete dominance that Notre Dame has, now won 27 consecutive ACC games. And now you're going to make a strong case that Notre Dame has beaten both of who your potential ACC championship matchups is going to be with North Carolina and Clemson. And both of those teams only end up with one loss going into that conference championship. That only makes Notre Dame look better. And you can almost crown Notre Dame as the ACC, definitely the ACC regular season champ. They took down Syracuse, North Carolina,
Handily,
Clemson,
by the way.
Yeah, they're undefeated in the ACC, and they beat the two teams who are going to probably be playing, for the ACC championship, and their only losses. Like, it's everything goes through Notre Dame. I think that statement right there, that 27 consecutive times this season, 2 one-loss teams are likely going to play in the ACC championship, and Notre Dame has handed out both those losses. You can confidently say Notre Dame doesn't belong in the ACC for football, like, logistically, but the ACC runs through them when it comes to football. And that might be dramatic or a stretch, but when you've won 27 straight and the two teams are playing, for the conference championship, and you've beaten both of them handily, I think it runs the ACC football right now runs through Notre Dame.
Yeah. It's very telling for the ACC because of what you were just talking about. And let's not forget, Notre Dame basically played a full schedule against the ACC 2 years ago during the pandemic season and found themselves playing in the ACC championship game. They won an ACC championship their only year as a member of the conference because of that. And then, again, found themselves in the playoff. And now the two best teams in the ACC each only have one loss, and they've been just beat downs by Notre Dame in a down year for Notre Dame. So I think it is very telling for the ACC. And it's just total this streak is going to end at some point.
Of course.
But for right now, it's just amazing that Notre Dame has this kind of consecutive games. Now, of course, they did lose the ACC championship game to Clemson.
Sure.
But again, we're talking about the regular season, and it is just a very amazing streak and shows how much really the ACC needs Notre Dame. I think that there are some people who can try to deny it, but the ACC needs Notre Dame badly. And it's, again, you've got the two guys who are going to win the division, and Notre Dame has beaten both of them this year. So after last week's dominating rushing performance, ESPN's Dan Orlovsky, who again is going to be the analyst for today's game, Notre Dame Navy, tweeted, "Y'all still want to fire Tommy Rees." So Jess, I'll start with you on this one. What do you think? Vince was ready to go. Vince, or Jesse,
all good.
What do you think?
No, good.
It's easy for someone like Dan Orlovsky to say that because he comes and goes a few weeks, and it seems like every time Dan comes, we see a good Tommy Rees. And maybe the conversation needs to be, how can Dan Orlovsky become the permanent, guy who's calling Notre Dame games? But it's easy. Like I said, it's easy for Dan to say because he's coming in off of good weeks. And obviously, he's preparing himself for the game this week. So he's watching film, and it's easy to go back and say, oh, wow, look at all the good things. But he hasn't been here from start to finish. Like, if you watch every single snap, I agree. Tommy Rees is a good coordinator, and he comes up with good plays, but he outthinks himself a lot. It's a lot of getting too cute, too this, too much that. And we finally saw it against Clemson last week of just doing what he knows is going to work consistently and making teams prove that they're going to stop you in it. And so, yeah, Tommy comes up with good plays, and I enjoy, his play design and his play call, but I just think he shoots himself in the foot so much, and he tries to get too cute.
Yes.
And so that's my biggest issue, and that goes along with a lot of the inconsistencies that we've seen. Tommy Rees is attributed to being inconsistent as well as a play caller, and what his overall kind of game plan is. And so I don't want to fire Tommy Rees. I just want Tommy Rees to be, Clemson Tommy Rees every week. And I know that that's not realistic, but we shouldn't see, the Stanford games and the Marshall games. Like those kind of play calling games shouldn't happen. And so that's where I'm going to kind of leave it.
Yeah, that's it. Show us you can do it game in, game out. Sorry, Vince, I'll let you go first.
You're good, man.
I forgot we started with Jesse on this one.
It's okay. No. He's had 9 games this year, right? He's had 9 opportunities to do his job. Okay, do your effing job, right? You've had 9 opportunities. I would say that 33% of those 9 opportunities, he's done a better than average job, right? One of those opportunities, he's done a bang up awesome job. You add those two together, that's 44%. So 44% of the time you do a good job at your job. Most of the time you're getting fired for that, okay? I'm not advocating that Tommy Rees get fired. I'm saying Tommy Rees needs to be more consistent with what he does because you only have 12 total opportunities a year, maybe 13 if you make a bowl game. You have 13 to 14 opportunities to do your job. And then, of course, that doesn't even bring into play the quarterback development, which we could get into. But you need to do your job at a more consistent basis.
Yes.
Otherwise, people aren't going to be happy. And right now, he's at a 44% clip, in my opinion. That's not if I operated a 44% success rate at my job,
goodbye.
Probably won't have that very long.
Yeah. It shouldn't have to be a special game plan. It's like, What's your offense? Game in, game out. Just show us you can do it. You don't have to like show us you can be tricky and go off tendencies and do all this stuff. Let's just see what's the offense and go out and run the offense consistently on a game in, game out basis. It shouldn't come to it.
Right.
Yeah, and I've said it before. He just needs to establish what he wants his foundation or identity to be as an offense and do that really well and just have small wrinkles week by week that come off of what you do really well. And perfect example is Drew Pine pulling that RPO read and getting in on the touchdown. It's the exact same motion. They're showing the same offense that they've run the whole game, but you just throw in the tiniest little wrinkle and let Pine finally pull it in the most important, part of the field in the red zone and score. That's what I want to see Tommy do, is get wrinkles off of what he knows his team does really well. That is what I need to see him consistently. I don't need to see, him lining up in all these different sets that have no success. Line up in what work, do it really well, and then show some variations to keep teams on their toes.
Yep.
Yeah. Joe had a super chat. He says, happy game day, not assuming it wins. See Marshall and Stanford. But I think these next 2 games should be coached and played with USC and the bowl game in mind. What do you think about that, Vince?
Well, I mean, they should be coached with that game in mind. I mean, I don't think it does anybody any good to coach a game thinking about games in the future. So I will disagree with Joe on that one. I know Joe's a coach, and I don't think he would coach a game thinking about 2 games ahead. That's just not a recipe for success. You have to coach this game, and you have to coach this team for where you can coach them for where maybe you want them to be in the future. You're building things, you're building the foundation, that kind of thing. But you can't look 2 games in the future while you're coaching this game, because that's how you lose.
Yeah, going off what Vince said, I think the most important thing is just coaching this game how you want the success to go for the rest of the season, your offensive success. You found the formula for what's kind of working, and you have these back end 3 games, so allow them to work off of each other. Allow what what you want to accomplish against Clemson to roll into Navy, to roll into Boston College, to roll into USC, so that by the time you're at USC, you're putting together even a better display or performance or offense than what you did against Clemson. And I think that they need to, again, they don't need to get into, do we need to see maybe a little bit more passing today? Sure, because of where Navy's secondary is. But that doesn't mean, we're opening up the playbook and we're going with these spread, shotgun, drop back looks. Like, no, just stick to what is your offense and what you're going to run against USC, and continue to build this kind of well-oiled machine. I think that's the best way to look at it in my eyes.
The question, there's a question here in the chat. I can't remember, but if against the option, a player gets the quarterback in the backfield with the ball in his hands, it counts as a sack, right?
Nope. Only
it
if they're
depends on if he's going toward the line of scrimmage, basically. Doesn't
I
it?
mean, you got to be dropping back for a pass,
Right.
and it should be fairly obvious if a quarterback is dropping back for a pass, or if they're running option, or it's a QB keep or whatever. Like last week, if DJ Uiagalelei was running quarterback power and he got tackled in the backfield, that's not a sack. That's just
Right.
a tackle for loss. So.
Right.
Yeah, there's just going to be a lot more TFLs in
Yes.
the column this week than
Right.
sacks, right? That it's just another way of saying sack, tackle for loss. It's like the rushing version of a sack, a tackle for loss.
Right. Scale of 1 to 10, how strongly do you want to see the Notre Dame Navy rivalry continue in the future?
Vince?
Absolutely, 100%. That's a 10. I absolutely want this rivalry to continue. I am a student of history, and I will always appreciate the history behind Notre Dame and Navy. And you've got 12 games. You've got room for Navy on your schedule. Period. End of discussion. Sometimes it's bigger than the game itself, and I know that sounds corny and that sounds like a line, but it's true. This game is bigger than the game. It needs to continue.
Yeah, I talked about this on Thursday a little bit with Brian. Notre Dame has been playing Navy since 1927. There is a trophy on the line, the Rip Miller Trophy. And so anytime you bring up a rivalry and you bring up trophies and you bring up a team that you've played since 1927 and the mutual respect that the Naval Academy and the University of Notre Dame have for each other, that and the help that Notre Dame provided Navy at one point, I just think it's always a game that belongs on the schedule. I know it's not the sexiest. I know it's not the most fun, watching the triple option come into town, but it's a rivalry. It's a tradition. And I don't think that there's any reason, to take them off the schedule. It's just, there's a mutual respect. Obviously Navy doesn't get quite the, the recruits and the level of football players that Notre Dame or a lot of the other Power 5 schools do, but that's secondhand for them. They're more concerned about their commitment to the academy and all of those things. So I, as a person, love this tradition against Navy, no matter what state that the Navy football team is in. So
we've got some different comments. Like Stymie says, once a decade at Yankee Stadium because history, never pinstripes again. And then like Alan says, I want Notre Dame versus Army again. And, we've had other people, say like, why don't, would like to see him play Army more often. I'm a little bit torn on this because I've always been behind it because they were never playing FCS teams. And now, they'd never played an FCS team. They were the final holdout to never play an FCS team. But what's going to happen next year? They're going to play Tennessee State. So, I kind of like sort of what Alan is saying. I wouldn't mind seeing like maybe you do it like you play Army on the even number years, you play Navy in the odd numbers, something like that, where maybe you rotate it if you're going to do it. But, again, I've never been hot on it. It's Veterans Day weekend, so I'll just stick with okay, whatever. So I'm like an 8 on this. Again,
good, though. 8's pretty high.
Yeah, I mean, it's still. I'm okay because it is tradition and, the original meaning and, how the whole thing got started and one lot, that kind of thing. But don't get me started on the fact that Notre Dame has to subsidize basically a government-funded institution. So,
ooh, look at you.
Feisty.
Double fill in the blanks. The rival you most want to see on Notre Dame's schedule going forward is blank, but the rival you least want to see is blank. Vince, start with you.
So the way I look at this question was, which one do I want to remove from the current schedule and which one would I want to add to the current schedule? That's the way I took this question, right? I would say that I want to remove Stanford. I know everybody's going to be shocked by that. You got to remove Stanford. That game means nothing. There is no tradition behind this game. Please, please, please get rid of Stanford. And I know they have a trophy for that game, Jess, but I still don't like it.
Yeah, I'm going to get you on that one.
That's fine. They can have a trophy, right? You have won the last X amount. That now can be permanently mounted on the wall, and it doesn't need to go anywhere else. Boom, there it is. They need to develop a trophy, and they need to have Clemson on the schedule every year. That's what I want to see. Yes, they have the relationship with the ACC, and so they have Clemson every once in a while. They're doing a home and away, obviously, this year, next year. I think that game would be fun to have every year. I just do. I think that game would be fun. And I will also add a third thing to this. If you are telling me which one do I not want to see that is not currently on the schedule, and that would be Michigan. I do not want them on the schedule.
It doesn't have to be currently on the schedule. Right. I'm just talking about because obviously
I went both
these
ways.
Rivalries, there was a time obviously when Navy, Michigan State, Purdue, Michigan, and obviously USC were always on the schedule, but that's changed because of both the Big Ten schedule as well as Notre Dame's ACC arrangement.
I don't want Michigan on the schedule every year. Every few years, fine. Not every year. I'm good.
Jess? Yeah, so I'm just getting a few more things. I'm bulletproofing my case here for everyone to I'm just bulletproofing. So the original question, what rival do I want to see on Notre Dame's schedule going forward? I am all in favor of bringing back Michigan State onto Notre Dame's schedule. Notre Dame played Michigan State from 1948 to 2017 pretty much every year. Like Michigan State was on the schedule. There's another trophy involved, the Megaphone Trophy. I am all, they've been playing Michigan State since 1897. I always enjoyed, those games. I talked about this a little bit too. I very much considered going to the school of Michigan State. I think it's a very nice campus, all those things. I just like, those are good, solid games. Like in the early 2000s, those were very good Notre Dame, Michigan State games. There was the double overtime games. There was the fake field goals. There was Kirk Cousins. All of those games, Notre Dame leads the series 48-28. But, since Notre Dame ripped off an 8-game win streak in the 80s and 90s, Michigan State has led the series 11-8, the last kind of 20 times or so that they played. It's a competitive series. I like Michigan State on the schedule. I think they're another very well-coached team, a very solid program. I like them much more than Michigan. They have much more class, dignity. I hate, playing Michigan because of, to me, I don't like the fans a lot. I have a lot of friends who are Michigan fans. So I want to add Michigan State back to the
Yes, I agree.
Back to the schedule.
Right. So who's off the mix?
Off the schedule, man. I like to keep the rivals. But if I had to get rid of one, I lean towards Stanford and Boston College. I know you can't really get rid of Boston College because it's the two independents, the two, strong Catholic schools.
Well, and they're part of the ACC too. So
yeah, it kind of goes.
You're going to play them. Yeah.
That helps out. I guess I have to go on board with Vince here. And if we're removing a true rival, the one who means the least, it's got to be Stanford.
Yeah. See, I get what you're saying, Jess, about Michigan State, and I get, all the recent acrimony with Michigan that Vince is talking about, why he doesn't want to put them back on. Stanford is one I definitely don't care about. But like, again, like when you went back to that time, which has only been 10, 12 years ago, when Purdue, Michigan State, a lot of times Boston College and Michigan, Michigan wasn't always on the schedule, but they were, regulars. Like there are only so many games you can get up for in a season. And like when all of those teams were on it, the games always meant more to Purdue, Michigan State, and Boston College than they meant to Notre Dame. Like Michigan was still going to be the big one. So any of the, I don't mind them rotating and being part of the schedule, but like even last year, like when Purdue was back on and walking through the parking lot, there was just that Purdue stepbrother syndrome, and Michigan State had it to an extent as well. So I'd still rather see Michigan be periodically on the schedule than I would Michigan State for that. And maybe now that they're not regulars on the schedule, maybe it's a little bit different. But like when they were on the schedule all the time, I just always felt like it meant much more to both Purdue and Michigan State than it meant to Notre Dame. So I would not mind seeing Stanford get punted from the schedule, and I wouldn't mind seeing Michigan more often, because I'm still from a time when seeing those Notre Dame Michigan games early in the season,
they meant a lot.
Those were just good, rivalry games. It always meant a lot, and there was always going to be a lot of attention on it. But I get reasons why nobody cares to see Michigan. So
I just don't like all that comes with it. It's always a bad taste in my mouth, no matter what happens.
Yeah. Over under 19.5 passing attempts for Drew Pine today.
Man, how many did he attempt against Clemson? I know he only completed 9. Yeah, it's
19.
It's over. I think that they're going to try to get a little more cutesy in the pass game today. And there's a really good comment brought up in the chat, and I think that someone like Lorenzo Styles today needs to have a game. Tobias is out. Obviously, we saw the transfer at wide receiver. I'm not saying he needs to have a huge game, but we've seen the drops recently. I think this is a big game to kind of get him going a little bit towards the right direction. So I could see some more pass attempts today, and I'd like to see Lorenzo Styles being the guy catching some of those, because I think he can do some good things today.
I was going to go over here, but then I started thinking about it, and this game might be the quickest in real time that any game is on the schedule, right?
Yeah.
Navy's going to run the ball. Notre Dame's going to run the ball.
Love that.
Series are going to be limited in this game, so there's not going to be as many opportunities to throw the ball. I'm going to say under. I think it's going to be under because I just don't think they're going to have as many opportunities to throw the ball. They're going to want to run it first. They're going to throw it, and I think they're going to have success throwing it. I think he has more points, more yards than he had, in the last game for sure. But I don't think they're going to throw it that often because I don't think they're going to have as many opportunities.
Yeah, I'm going to hedge on under as well. I think he's going to be probably right around that 17, 18 range once again. Just because, just what you were saying, like statistically, Navy's numbers would say, well, you need to throw against them because they only give up 88 rushing yards a game, but they're giving up 275 passing yards per game. But like we've seen even some good teams that Navy has had in these last few years, and Notre Dame has just pounded them.
Yeah.
So I'm not gonna say that Navy's defense is such that Notre Dame can't run the ball against them just because statistically they're not giving up that many yards. I think they're still going to try to pound them, and I think that Drew Pine will have – I'm thinking he's going to have a more efficient day, and the yards per pass will be up, but I don't think that we're going to see, like, quantity pass attempts today.
Yeah. I think he could very easily go over 200 yards passing. Yeah. I don't think it's going to take 19 passes to get there.
Yeah. So which is more likely? All three Irish running backs top 100 yards from scrimmage, or an Irish wide receiver has the unit's first 100-yard receiving game?
I just said that Drew Pine is going to have under 19 pass attempts, and I'm going to say that the Irish wide receiver has 100 yards. So I think it's going to be a very efficient day in the pass game. I think there's going to be a lot of yards after the catch. And I might even go a step further and say that 100-yard receiver is going to be Lorenzo Styles.
Vince took a lot of my thunder there. You're saying you're saying all-purpose yards, right? Are those straight rushing yards?
All-purpose yards for the backs.
All-purpose. It's yards from scrimmage.
Ooh, that's tough. I think Tyree's going to get some touches today out in space, and I think that he's not going to rush. I think Diggs and Estime are going to get close to each 100 on the ground, and I think Tyree's going to get really close to 100 all-purpose yards. But I think that we're going to see I think we're going to see Diggs and Estime over 100, and I think we're going to see a more concerted effort, like Vince said, to get Styles into the pass game. I think him and Mayer are going to have some sort of combination with, who's those targets, and I just think it's a get-right game for someone like Lorenzo Styles. I think they need him to have this kind of get-right game, and so I'm going to go it's going to be close, but I think he's going to get to 100. These are all these guys are going to end up, I think, really close to 100. And that's
the thing is, it's just so hard to take the wide receiver because we haven't seen it, and it should be Lorenzo Styles, but the drops, he's got 5 drops right now, which are among the leaders in the nation. Unfortunately, it seems like a focus thing with him. Like they've tried to do some things to get him some confidence and get him in the game early, but I just think it's too much for all 3 running backs to have 100 yards from scrimmage, because again, like you said, the snap count should be lower.
Yes, that's my issue.
So if you can get, I would feel more confident in the receiver, like if Tobias Merriweather was there, but we're not going to see him today. But I just think a receiver is going to have a better chance because of the yards after catch. All it's going to take is potentially 3 or 4 completions to one guy, and he could be over 100 yards with that. So I'll take the receiver over all 3 running backs just because I think it's going to be too hard for all 3 running backs because of the touches.
And the question was chances are, right? So, I mean, the odds are in that favor, I would say.
Right.
I think Tyree catches a touchdown today. I'm going to throw that out there for fun.
Okay.